And I think I had to come to a place in my life where I was okay. Now, this is just speaking as a single dad.
Yeah.
I had to, and I think it can translate, or has translated in other conversations. So we'll see how it does. But I had to come to a place where I was okay saying, I'm laying down dating for a season or for seasons, potentially. God, I hope it isn't forever, but I'm going to lay it down so that I can be fully attuned to you in this season, so that I can be self-aware of who I am, of the mistakes I've made, so that I can be healthy spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, financially. I want all of that. I desire all that. God, I think you've led me to make sure that all of that is prepared before I even enter a dating relationship. Now, do I think you can be in a dating relationship and learn more about yourself and grow in some of these areas? Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's a benefit of dating, is to start to learn more about, like, how you're wired. And you can learn a lot by yourself when you're solo, but sometimes it takes being in a dating relationship and, going, doing life with somebody else to realize, okay, I've got a maybe a humility issue here, or I have a forgiveness issue here, or there's something that's stirring up in my heart. Why is that there? Is that something from the past? I might need to address that, right?
Right.
So I do think you can learn a lot from dating, but I think you've got to, number one, in preparing, you've got to surrender yourself to dating and be in a place where loneliness is not your answer. You're not dating to fix loneliness, right?
Yeah.
That, or better said, I think that you're not dating because you're lonely. That just dating is not the answer for loneliness at all. And so many people that I know step into dating relationships because ultimately they're just lonely and they want to spend quality time with someone of the opposite sex. And I get that. Like, I totally get that. We all get that.
Yeah.
But are you bringing your best to the situation if that's what you're doing? Because ultimately, are you still not lonely? Because you're probably still lonely because, the reality is you're probably trading that relationship for another relationship you could be having with another guy and doing like some discipleship, with someone else, or a mentor, or community in general, right? And so another part, I think, is you have to start renewing your mind. I think you have to go on the self-awareness campaign, especially for people that have come out of divorce or have come out of another relationship that's been hard, or even a short relationship. I think you have to take some time. And this is what I had to do. I had to take some time. I got my Evernote out and I just started journaling day after day after day and just got my thoughts out and started to organize those thoughts into things that I was learning, things that God was showing me about who I am today, things that God's showing me about who I am tomorrow. But you got to get those thoughts down.
Yeah.
If you're not meeting with a counselor, which I would highly recommend, you've got to be able to really meet with God and have him show you these areas that you can start to renew your mind and go on these, what I would say, like a self-awareness campaign, helping to understand who you are. Go take a personality test. I know we've got to, we make jokes about all the personality tests that are out there, but take one. I've noticed mine have changed over time. And so take another one and kind of check in and see where you're at, see what motivates you, and see where your fears are and where your dreams are and where your strengths and weaknesses have come up. Because when you step out of a relationship and go to step into another one quickly without fully understanding what happened to how your heart was hurt, or how you hurt somebody else's heart, and you step into another relationship, you're bringing unresolved conflict from inside your mind and heart and bringing that into the next relationship. And then that person's going to have to help you unpack that. And that's not fair for them to do that.
Yeah, that's so good. That's one thing that you just even talking about doing divorce and speaking to divorced people that might be listening. This is something I haven't even shared on the podcast, but when I went through my breakup with my ex about 3 years ago, that was my first relationship, and it felt like a divorce in a way. So I was dating in the way I'd been raised in church. I was like, oh, okay, now I'm trying to figure this out. This must lead to marriage, because dating leads to marriage. And so it felt like, oh man, just got ripped part of me out. And so I've been going to counseling and therapy for the last 3 years, and specifically did a class about people that were divorced as a single person who wasn't married.
Smart.
But it was wow, I got to sit with people that were actually walking through divorce, who had been married for 20, 30 plus years. And wow, this is not what I want to happen in my life, Lord willing, one day. And so it really taught me a lot and helped me see here's real people. And so I think you coming on and sharing some of your story about that will help other single men who maybe wouldn't take that step to actually go to a counseling or a therapy session or something like that. Or there's a stigma around, oh, I'm weak if I do that. So
it's worth it.
Yeah. We'd love to have you talk a little bit about what, the process of divorce has taught you specifically about the importance of dating and relationships.
Yeah. Humility, humility, and more humility.
Yeah.
It's, there's a reality that divorce is not natural. It's painful. No one ever wants it. No one ever thinks that they're going to be a part of it. I mean, no one's thinking about that on their wedding day.
Yeah.
I know I wasn't. And many times, or I can only speak for myself, it's not something I saw coming. It's not something I wanted. And even as it was happening, I was doing everything I could to save and fight for that marriage. And for whatever reason, it didn't work out. And that was so hard. So hard.
Yeah.
So the encouragement to people who haven't been married and or still are married is you never, ever, ever want to go through something like that. It is one of the most painful, if not the most painful thing on earth. And I know there's losing parents and I know there's all of those things, but it is truly a death to grieve. And especially if children are involved. And so what it's taught me is to stop, to rest, to seek God, to not fill the vacuum with other things, even healthy things, more fitness or more adventure races or more of the things that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Don't fill that gap. There's going to be a gap there. It's going to be a big gap. It's a broken heart. It's a space in your home that won't be filled anytime soon. But you can't go fill it with the next thing that comes along. And I've sat across the table from so many guys that have pretty quickly started to make that shift and have felt empty and have felt lonely. And rightfully so. It is a lonely place to be. There's people around me that didn't know how to interact with me after that. People that were in my corner through the whole thing, still even afterwards, even to this day, in some ways are like, it's just hard to interact with someone that has been divorced, that sometimes we as the church don't quite know how to engage with that person. And that's not across the board, but that's a reality. It's just a lonely place to be.
Yeah.
And there's not like all of these support groups. And I don't know if that's helpful either, but
yeah.
I will tell you that getting into counseling was so key and starting to work backwards. And understand how I got into the relationship, what I was thinking and desiring and expecting when I got into the relationship, what the other person was thinking, desiring, and expecting when they were getting to the relationship, how we were missing each other, how we were aligned, and start to kind of just learn by going backwards. One of the things that I would pass on is something I still use to this day, and it's this idea of green light, yellow light, red light. Yeah. And it's so helpful as you're thinking about dating someone else. The reality is, especially in the beginning, there's gonna be lots of green lights. It's just everything's green. Green flag, green flag, green flag.
Right.
And every once in a while, especially in the beginning, it might be a yellow briefly, and then you somehow are trying to talk yourself into that being a green. And goodness forbid it's a red. You're going to try to talk yourself into somehow that being a yellow or a green. Yeah. But I would say you've got to stop and be honest with yourself and invite people into the process. Don't date in the dark. I mean, I couldn't say this enough. People constantly date in the dark. They take their dating relationship offline, away from other people outside of their community, and they don't invite people into the process, healthy people into the process to be able to walk with them. Yeah. But the reality is you can have, 20 green flags with someone that you're dating. And if there's one red flag, you've got to pump the brakes and say, why is this red? And let's talk about this together. Let's work through it. There could be a misperception. There could be miscommunication, maybe a lack of understanding. I would always use the phrase, seek to understand. Seek to understand why this is red, because it may not be red for her. It may be yellow for her or green for her. And so you've just got to determine, you got to seek to understand their perspective, your perspective. And if there's something that continues to come up that's red or yellow, I would say it doesn't matter how many things are green. You have got to stop and you've got to assess, is that something that I truly want to live with for the rest of my life? Because again, you're not preparing for dating, you're preparing for marriage. Yeah. It's not preparing to date. You're preparing to get married. If you are a Christian man that is pursuing Jesus and is pursuing the heart of another woman, then you are preparing for marriage. And you're preparing her heart and yourself to be able to hold her heart for the rest of your life. And that is a beautiful thing. So you need to make sure that there aren't these little cracks or these crevices there where the enemy can come in and can attack you. And that's where those yellow and red flags are that you've got to stop and say, what is this? And that's just something that I've learned over time and continue to apply to this day.
Yeah. Wow. So good.